A lot of people don't know this about me, but I used to box a bit in my free time back in the day. And at this gym I went to, there was a tier system set up. And at the very top of the ladder was the boxing champion. You could fight this champion, but only if you worked your way up to him. And to do that, you had to fight and defeat the lower tier champions first. So let's say you're in tier 1, which is the tier you start in. You fight and beat the tier 1 champion, you work your way up to tier 2, etc. and etc. until eventually you work your way to the pinnacle, to the absolute top tier. That's when you have your opportunity to fight the champion. That was my goal. I wanted to fight him, beat him, and become the new champion. So I trained. I hardened my body as best as I could. I strengthened my punches as best as I could until I felt confident I could defeat all of the lower tier champions. It took me a few weeks, but I finally beat all of them and worked my way to the pinnacle. It was finally time to challenge the champion. I challenged him. He accepted. We fought. I lost. Brutally. He eviscerated me in the worst ways imaginable. This man was a monster. He was absolutely out of this world. He was truly like a lab project that has escaped and is now wreaking havoc on the boxing world. It was incredible. The strength and size of this man. It was ridiculous. It was like this guy was absolutely indefatigable. It was one of the most embarrassing things I have ever experienced in my entire life, but I had to shrug it off. I had to keep pushing. I knew I just had to train harder. It was to be expected I would lose on my first try. He was the reigning champion for a reason. I wasn't gonna beat him on my first try, let's be honest. So I shrugged it off and I went to go train. Harder than I've ever trained in my entire life. I hardened my body even more. Strengthened my blows even more. I felt I was ready. I challenged him once more. He accepted once again. We fought. I lost once again. But not as quickly as the first time, not as easily as the first time. I had made some progress. This was good. I trained even harder. Even harder. I was throwing up. I was training so violently, so brutally. I went through things no man should ever have to go through. But I felt I had reached my peak. If I couldn't defeat him in this final form, I don't think I ever could have beaten him. I challenged him for what may have been the last time. He accepted. We brawled. It was like two titans clashing. You could feel the earth shake with every blow that was directed onto each other's body. It was absolutely magnificent. One of the best fights I have ever experienced in my entire life. I was beaten, bruised, and battered beyond recognition. I was throwing right hook, left hook, right hook, left hook. He hit me with many, many jabs, and it seemed like he was dodging most of my punches. It seemed bleak for me, until finally I saw an opening. I hit him with a right hook directly in the temple, square in the head. That rocked him. He was rattled for a bit. I took that as my opportunity and hit him with a flurry of blows until he finally, like a redwood, collapsed. My victory was in sight. The referee began the count. He made it to 10. I had finally defeated the champion. I had finally beaten Matt, the Wii Sports boxing champion. I finally was able to set my Wiimotes down and give them a much needed rest. I sat down on my couch, took a chug of my Monster Energy, and sighed, knowing that I have just beaten one of the hardest video game characters to ever be created. I don't know what Nintendo juiced him up with, dude. I don't know what kind of virtual steroids they injected into this man's body. But he finally was defeated. I had finally become the new Wii Sports Boxing Champion. I was finally able to turn off my Wii and give it a break. I had finally done the impossible.